The rustling of the ancient scroll echoed through the chamber, a sound that only the dust-filled corners of the lost library could understand. Each turn of the parchment carried an eerie weight, as if the words were not meant for human eyes. Dr. Tessa Winter, a historian specializing in forgotten civilizations, stood alone in the center of the room, her fingers brushing lightly against the brittle paper. She had always been intrigued by the past, by the stories that shaped the ancient world. But this discovery was different. This wasn't just any relic. It was a record of a civilization that had been wiped from history, its people erased by time, yet their warnings had survived. The air was thick with the smell of must and age as the chamber's faintly flickering light highlighted the massive stone walls adorned with arcane symbols. Dr. Winter adjusted her glasses, her eyes scanning the text with a growing sense of unease. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. It spoke of a final message, a warning from a civilization that had lived millennia ago. The scroll had been buried beneath the ruins of a long-forgotten city, hidden within a remote planet's core. And yet, somehow, this warning had endured, waiting for someone to listen. She wasn't alone, though. Behind her, Captain Rio Ashford, the leader of the space crew that had discovered the planet, was pacing nervously, arms crossed. "This better not be another one of your mysterious ancient prophecies, Doc," he muttered. His tone was skeptical, but there was an underlying tension in his voice. He was always a man of action, not one for ancient mysteries. But even he couldn't deny that the discovery had a strange pull. The captain had seen the most advanced tech in the galaxy, but this was different. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet," Tessa replied without looking up. "But if this civilization was powerful enough to leave a warning, we need to pay attention. They might have known something we don't." "Great," Rio replied, his voice tinged with sarcasm. "So, we're digging up warning signs now? What's next? Haunted tombs and cursed artifacts?" Tessa shook her head, pushing her hair back as she carefully deciphered another line on the scroll. The words grew darker as she read aloud, her voice reverberating through the chamber. "Beware the skies, for the stars do not shine on the innocent. The earth beneath will consume you, and the heavens above will judge your fate." Rio turned toward her, eyebrows raised. "That's not exactly comforting." She felt it too, the cold weight of the words. It was as though the message was warning them specifically, a warning that had transcended time and space. She folded the scroll with great care and placed it back into protective case. "We need to inform the crew. There's more to this planet than just ruins and fossils. Something feels off." Just then, the alarm blared across the ship, a shrill sound that cut through the air like a knife. Tessa and Rio exchanged glances, both of them already knowing that their discovery had set something into motion. "What the hell is that?" Rio demanded, rushing toward the comms panel. His fingers danced across the console, pulling up the emergency scans of the planet's atmosphere. This can't be right." The readouts were a blur of red warnings, sudden fluctuations in the planet's magnetic field, increasing seismic activity beneath the surface, and most troubling of all, a rapid descent of an unknown craft entering the atmosphere. Tessa's heart raced. "It's them. They're coming." "Who's coming?" Rio snapped, turning back to her, the tension in his voice thickening. "Who the hell is coming, Tessa?" The realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. The people who left this warning, the ones who wiped themselves out, they're back. Rio cursed under his breath. "And they don't seem to be too friendly, do they?" Tessa's fingers trembled as she activated the ship's main communication system. "We need to prepare the crew. Whatever's coming. It's not just a threat. It's a reminder of the price of curiosity." As the ship's lights dimmed and the distant rumble of an incoming storm shook the very hull, the crew gathered in the common area, exchanging worried glances. Tessa stood at the front, her hand shaking slightly as she began to speak. "Listen up, everyone. What we've uncovered on this planet is not just a relic. It's a warning, a message from a civilization that destroyed itself. And now it seems that message is coming back to find us." Rio stepped forward, his arms crossed, his stern face betraying no fear, only urgency. "The scans show an unknown craft entering the atmosphere. We have no idea who or what it is. Everyone, prepare for possible contact." The murmurs of the crew grew louder, filled with a mix of fear and skepticism. Tessa could see the doubt in her eyes. But there was something else there, too, a sense of unease, a recognition that something unnatural was about to happen. Outside, the planet's surface trembled once again, more violently this time. Rio was already strapping himself into his flight suit, a look of grim determination on his face. "We can't stay here. If that thing touches down, it might be the end of us all." Tessa nodded, her own heart pounding as she considered the impossible odds. The message in the past seemed more like a curse than a warning, and it was one that they couldn't escape, not without understanding what the civilization had gone through, and why they had vanished. As the ship's engines roared to life, lifting them off the ground, Tessa glanced out the window at the vast expanse of space beyond. The stars were silent now, their light no longer a comfort but a reminder. She couldn't help but wonder, were the warnings of these lost civilizations meant to save them, or were they a cry for help, a warning to avoid repeating their fate? And as the ship broke through the atmosphere, heading for an uncertain future, the real question remained. What had these ancient people seen that had led them to destroy themselves? And what had they known about humanity that made their warning so urgent? In the silence that followed, the crew could only wait for the answer. The future now out of their control. The ship jolted violently as it broke through the thick atmosphere, an unseen force causing the vessel to lurch sideways. Tessa, strapped tightly into her seat, gritted her teeth as the turbulence rattled her bones. Across from her, Captain Rio Ashford tightened his grip on the controls, his brow furrowed with concentration. The rest of the crew, scattered throughout the ship, clung to whatever they could as the sound of the emergency alarms blared in the background. Tessa's mind was still racing. The warning from the ancient civilization echoed through her thoughts, each word carrying more weight than before. They had spoken of the skies and the earth, and now they were facing something from above, something beyond their understanding, something that had come for them. "Steady." Rio's voice cut through chaos. "We need to get to the surface, fast." The ship shuddered again, this time with a deep, resonating boom, the sound of something massive crashing just outside their proximity. The craft had arrived. But what was it? Tessa's heart skipped a beat as she leaned forward. Staring out the front viewport, her breath caught in her chest. Through the thick clouds and the increasing electromagnetic disturbances, she caught sight of a massive, shadowy silhouette hovering above the planet's surface. It was enormous, larger than any ship they had ever encountered. The thing was a vessel of unknown design, with angular shapes and lights that flickered erratically. "It's huge," Rio muttered under his breath. "Is that the ship we detected? I've never seen anything like it." The massive craft hovered ominously, casting a shadow over the planet below, its strange energy field distorting the view of the surface. It didn't seem to follow any known patterns of flight, shifting erratically and seemingly defying all the laws of physics. A deep sense of dread settled over Tessa as she watched it. "This can't be good," Rio said, his voice tense. "Get ready, everyone. We're going in." Tessa swallowed hard, gripping her armrests as the ship sped toward the surface. The ancient scroll's words rattled around in her mind. The civilization that had once thrived on this planet had warned of the skies above. Now, as they neared the landing zone, it felt like the warning had become their reality. The stars above, once symbols of hope and discovery, now seemed ominous, as if the universe itself was judging them for disturbing the long-forgotten past. "Rio, what do you think we're dealing with?" Tessa asked, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. This doesn't feel like a simple encounter." Rio's eyes narrowed as he punched in the landing sequence. "I don't know, document. But whatever it is, it's not friendly. We need to secure the area before it gets any worse." The ship's engines whined as the craft descended, coming closer to the planet's surface. Outside the viewport, the landscape became clearer, a desolate, barren wasteland of jagged rocks and twisted, unnatural formations. The surface was scarred, pockmarked by what looked like centuries of bombardment. A graveyard of ancient technology and abandoned structures loomed in the distance. The planet was no longer the home of a vibrant civilization. It was a shadow of its former self. Tessa's heart raced. "We need to make sure we're not walking into a trap. This planet it's not just abandoned. It feels like it was erased on purpose. Rio gave a sharp nod. The crew's getting their gear ready. We'll do a quick reconnaissance before making any decisions. The ship finally touched down with a heavy thud, the ground beneath them trembling as they settled onto the rocky surface. The airlock opened with a hiss, and the crew began to disembark, armed with weapons and scanning devices. The oppressive silence outside was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of the ship's engines. Tessa stepped down from the ship, her boots crunching against the jagged rocks. She looked around, her gaze sweeping across the eerie landscape. There were no signs of life, no animal sounds, no breeze. Just a faint hum of the alien craft hovering above them. The only movement was a slow swirling of dust, carried by some unseen wind. "Keep your guard up," Rio instructed the team, his voice steady but laced with concern. "We don't know what's out here." Tessa felt a shiver run down her spine as she scanned the horizon. The ancient warning still echoed in her mind, "Beware the skies." But it wasn't the skies above that terrified her. It was the ominous ship above them and the ground beneath their feet. She had no doubt now. This wasn't just about the alien craft. It was about the planet itself, and whatever had destroyed it. What if the civilization didn't just vanish? Tessa whispered to herself, what if they were wiped out by something here? Something we're not ready for? Rio turned, sensing her unease. "I don't like where this is heading, Tessa. Let's stay sharp." The team proceeded cautiously, scanning the area as they made their way toward the nearest structure, a crumbled tower that once had stood tall against the alien landscape. As they approached, Tessa couldn't help but notice the strange symbols etched into the walls, symbols that resembled those she had seen on the ancient scroll. Her eyes widened as a thought crossed her mind. "Rio," she called, "the symbols, they match what's on the scroll. This place, it's the same as the civilization that warned us." Rio looked back at her, his expression darkening. "So, this isn't a random warning. It's all connected." Tessa nodded. "We need to understand what happened here. These ruins are a message, not just a tomb." As they moved deeper into the wreckage, something inside the tower shifted, causing the ground to tremble again. The dust lifted and an eerie hum filled the air. It wasn't just the energy from the hovering craft above. Something beneath the planet's surface was awakening. Tessa's pulse quickened. The warning was coming to life. "We've triggered something," she whispered. And then, without warning, a loud, mechanical sound erupted from beneath the earth, followed by a blinding flash of light. The ground cracked open, and an unknown force rose from below, twisting the air around them. The planet wasn't dead. It was waiting for someone to awaken what had been buried. And now they had disturbed it. The ground beneath their feet rumbled as a massive force beneath the surface emerged, twisting and writhing like a creature awakening from a long slumber. Tessa's heart skipped a beat as the air was filled with a low mechanical growl, a hum that vibrated in her bones. Whatever had lain dormant for centuries was now awake, and it didn't look happy. "What the hell is that?" Rio shouted, his voice barely audible over the rising cacophony. His hand instinctively moved to his sidearm, the cold metal of the weapon a small comfort against the terror swelling inside him. Tessa's eyes widened as the dust began to settle, revealing the monstrous form rising from the depths of the planet. It was a towering metallic behemoth, its body covered in strange, alien symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The creature resembled some sort of giant, four-armed machine, but with organic components that seemed to breathe and shift like the muscles of some ancient predator. "It's alive!" Tessa gasped, her voice tinged with awe and fear. "But it's not biological, it's something else entirely." Rio's face twisted in disbelief. "This isn't just a machine. It's a weapon." The behemoth's head turned slowly, its glowing eyes locking onto them with an unnerving intelligence. It had been dormant for millennia, and now it had found its purpose again, to protect what had been hidden. The air around them seemed to ripple with energy. As the giant's arms began to move, the ground beneath it cracking under its immense weight. Its movements were deliberate and measured, as if calculating its next strike. And with every step it took, the atmosphere seemed to grow thicker, charged with an oppressive energy that made it hard to breathe. "Move," Rio ordered, his voice full of urgency. We need to get back to the ship now. The crew scrambled to react, but the behemoth was too fast. With an earth-shattering roar, it swung one of its massive arms, sending a shockwave to the ground that knocked them off their feet. Tessa felt herself being thrown to the ground, the impact knocking the wind out of her lungs. "Stay down!" Rio barked, already getting back to his feet. He fired several rounds at the creature, but the bullets ricocheted harmlessly off its armored skin, leaving only small dents behind. It was clear this was no ordinary enemy. Tessa scrambled to her feet, her mind racing. What could stop this thing? A machine? No, it was more than that. It was a guardian, a protector left behind by the long-extinct civilization. But for what purpose? "Rio!" Tessa shouted as she ran toward him. "We can't fight this thing with weapons. We need to find a way to disable it. Figure out how to shut it down." Rio's eyes flicked to her, a grim understanding dawning on him. "I know, but how? This isn't something you can just turn off." Tessa took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. The scroll. She remembered the details of the ancient warning. The civilization had built this guardian, this protector, to prevent outsiders from disturbing their remains. But there had to be a way to stop it, a way to use their own technology against them. "We need to find a control center," Tessa said, determination hardening her voice. "There has to be a way to control this thing. It's not just a mindless weapon. It was created for a reason." Rio nodded. "You're right. We'll have to move fast. This thing won't give us much time." The behemoth took another step, its massive foot crashing into the ground with a deafening thud. It swung its other arm, and this time the attack wasn't a mere shockwave. It was aimed directly at them. The crew scattered as a massive limb crashed where they had just been standing, sending debris flying in all directions. "We need to get inside the ruins." Tessa shouted, "There has to be a way in. We'll find the control room." The crew moved as one, charging toward the entrance of the ancient tower. The behemoth's glowing eyes followed their every move, its arms raised for another devastating strike. Tessa's pulse hammered in her ears as they reached the entrance and scrambled inside, the massive doors sliding open with a hiss. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old, decaying technology, and the faint glow of ancient lights flickered on the walls. Tessa's mind raced as she looked around, searching for any signs of control center. The room was vast, filled with tower machines that seemed to hum with life, as though the tower was still powered by some ancient energy source. "Where do we start?" Rio asked, his voice taut with urgency. Tessa's eyes locked on a large central console, partially hidden in the shadows. It was the only thing in the room that seemed to be functional, the wires and screens still alive with faint activity. She ran toward it, heart pounding in her chest. The hum of the behemoth's movements was louder now, as if it were closing in on them. "I think this is it," Tessa exclaimed, reaching out to touch the console. Her fingers brushed over the alien symbols, which began to light up in response. There was a sudden surge of energy, and the whole room seemed to vibrate. "Watch out!" Rio shouted, but it was too late. The ground trembled as the behemoth outside slammed into the tower, shaking the entire structure to its core. Tessa's hands flew over the control panel, deciphering the symbols that flickered before her. She had no time to waste. Her thoughts were racing, trying to connect the pieces of a puzzle she barely understood. But then, like a bolt of lightning, it hit her. The symbols on the console mirrored the ones on the behemoth. They were connected. "Rio, I think I can control it." Tessa shouted, her voice filled with hope. Rio nodded, his expression tense but determined. "Do it, Tessa. We don't have much time." With a deep breath, Tessa pressed a sequence of buttons, her fingers moving quickly across the alien interface. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, the behemoth outside paused, its movement slowing down, as if waiting for further instructions. Tessa's heart raced. "It's working!" And just as she thought they had gained the upper hand, the tower shook again, this time more violently. The behemoth wasn't done yet. It was adapting, learning, and fighting back. But Tessa had one last trick up her sleeve, a final gamble. She took a deep breath and initiated the override. The room filled with a blinding light, and the ground below them trembled as the creature roared in fury. It wasn't over yet, but this time the fight was on their terms. The control room pulsed with energy, and for a split second, everything seemed to hold its breath. Tessa's heart was racing as she watched the readouts on the console, her fingers shaking over the glowing interface. The behemoth outside was still moving, its massive form visible through the cracked walls of the ancient tower. It seemed to be struggling, as though it was trying to break free of some invisible restraint. But it wasn't enough. Tessa had to act now. "Come on," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machine. "Just a little more." Rio was pacing behind her, constantly glancing at the door as if expecting the beast to burst through at any moment. His gun was still drawn, though it hadn't helped him so far. The behemoth's armor was impenetrable, and their weapons were useless. But they had something the creature didn't. Their minds. And in this game of survival, that was the key. With a deep breath, Tessa pressed the final sequence of symbols. The console seemed to hum louder, and for a moment, the air around them felt thick, heavy with potential. The behemoth outside gave another deafening roar, but it was weaker now, strained, as if it could no longer move as freely. "It's working," Rio exclaimed, his voice a mixture of relief and awe. "You did it!" But Tessa didn't let herself celebrate just yet. She watched the console screen with narrowed eyes, waiting for the final confirmation that the creature had been fully neutralized. It wasn't enough for it to stop moving. It had to be completely shut down. Her fingers hovered above the control panel, ready to enter the final command, when the entire building shook again. "No!" Tessa gasped, stumbling backward as the floor beneath them cracked. The walls groaned, and for a brief moment, she thought the tower itself might collapse under the weight of the creature's fury. It wasn't over. The behemoth was pushing against the restraints, adapting faster than she could keep up. Rio's voice cut through the chaos. "Tessa, we need to get out of here now. It's not going to hold for much longer." Tessa's mind raced as she glanced back at the console. It had to be done. The final command. It was just one more step, and they would be safe. But time was running out. The behemoth was regaining its strength, and she could feel the tension mounting, the heavy anticipation of the final battle. With a deep breath, Tessa slammed her palm onto the console, overriding the system and sending a surge of energy through the tower's core. The screens flickered wildly as the power surged, and then, for a moment, there was silence. The rumbling stopped. The behemoth outside ceased its movements, frozen in place like a statue. "It's done," Tessa breathed, her body sagging with exhaustion. Her legs felt like they might give out beneath her, and her hands trembled from the effort. She had done it. The creature was shut down. Rio stepped forward, his expression a mix of disbelief and admiration. "You did it," he said quietly. "I didn't think it was possible." Tessa managed a weary smile, wiping the sweat from her brow. "Neither did I," she admitted, taking a few shaky steps away from the console. "But sometimes you have to gamble everything." As they turned to leave the control room, the tower began to shake again, but this time it was different. The entire structure seemed to be coming alive, as if the beast had been the key to unlocking the last piece of the puzzle. The walls rumbled as they began to retract, revealing long-forgotten chambers filled with treasures and artifacts from the ancient civilization that had created the Guardian. "This place," Tessa murmured, her voice filled with awe. "It was all a test, wasn't it? A warning." Rio nodded, his gaze scanning the newly revealed chambers. "A test of strength, ingenuity, and perhaps even morality, to prove we were worthy." As they made their way back to the entrance, the behemoth's once menacing form now nothing more than a dormant relic of the past, Tessa's mind continued to race. The warning from the ancient civilization had been clear. No one was to disturb their secrets. But in the end, they had been able to unlock those secrets, not through brute force, but through understanding and creativity. They stepped out into the cool, alien air, the silence of the ruins around them almost serene. The tower that had once seemed so imposing now felt like a monument to the past, a reminder of a civilization long gone but not forgotten. Tessa turned to Rio, her face softening with a tired but satisfied smile. "We did it," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "We found the answers, and now we can leave." Rio smiled back, his eyes filled with respect. You really are something else, Tessa. As they made their way back to their ship, the sun setting in the distance, Tessa reflected on everything they had been through. The ancient guardian, the hidden civilization, and the lessons they had learned. They had faced impossible odds, but they had succeeded together. And for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they had proven that with enough ingenuity and determination, even the most insurmountable obstacles could be overcome. And as the ship's engines roared to life, taking them away from the ruins of a lost civilization, Tessa couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the universe still had to offer. But for now, she was content. The victory was theirs, and that was enough.